Welcome to Women Winning Divorce with your host, Heather Quick. Heather brings over 20 years of law experience that advocates and empowers women to achieve happier and healthier lives. Each week, we provide knowledge and guidance on different aspects of family law to help lead women through the difficult and emotional legal challenges that they are facing. Listen in as she discusses issues including divorce, custody, alimony, paternity, narcissism, mediation, and other family law issues to provide insight on the journey of women winning divorce. Welcome to the show. I'm Julie Morgan, and I'm joined by your host, Heather Quick. Hi, Heather. Good to see you again.
Great to see you as well, Julie.
Two awesome topics. One show, prenup, postnup. Oh, let's get into it. What is a prenup?
A prenuptial agreement is essentially it's a contract before you get married with your soon-to-be husband about really how things are going to play out if you get divorced.
Okay, so it's exactly what we've heard in the past about this topic. Okay.
And you can, really, I guess it can be whatever you want it to be. If you want it to be a contract for how you want things to go during the marriage as well, but it's primarily on how things will end up in the event of a divorce.
All right. But I think of prenups. Isn't that just really for celebrities or people with, like family money?
It is really for anyone who has assets coming into the marriage, but then also I like to think of it particularly for women, professional women. You may have invested a lot of time and money in a career, and even if you're only at the beginning of the career, there are ways to protect yourselves in a prenup in the event maybe you take time off for child rearing and things like that. So there are many things that we can do, even if it's not money that you have now you're wanting to protect. That seems to be the most common and first thought somebody has is, well, if I don't have assets now on my own, what do I need a prenup for?
Right. That's exactly what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, okay, I have this coming into the marriage, and just in case something happens, I want to make sure I have it when I leave it as well.
Correct, because when you're sitting in the chair here with me and saying, well, no, I did this, I did that. And most oftentimes without a prenup, it has morphed itself into a marital asset or things have been sold, things have been retitled, all because you really didn't understand before the marriage, maybe how that would work. And that's, again, something we talk about all the time. You don't know what you don't know. Maybe you've never been through that experience and it's not something you want to even look at or consider when you're in love and planning a wedding.
This really tells me I should seek professional advice regardless of what I think I have or what I think I don't have. A professional is necessary.
Exactly. And, and I know we've talked about these things before a little bit. And, myself as a business person, anytime you are going to go into a contractual relationship or a business arrangement, you do your due diligence. And you also, sometimes you do sign contracts before you go into those things. Well, you are entering into essentially a contract that is at this point going to be dictated by Florida law. So you can let Florida decide how things will be when you divorce, or you can educate yourself and say, why don't we be smart about this and plan this out ahead of time? And that way, then we're making the decision on what we would think it should be versus relying on what the legislatures in the state of Florida have determined it to be.
Okay, so you mentioned that it's more than just money, right? So what sort of things are covered in a prenup, in addition to money, of course?
Well, we also deal with debts, and that I think is really important and something we don't talk enough about, and certainly couples don't, because many times divorces do really hinge. There's a lot of financial disagreement, and that is a big part of it that you ought to talk about. Tends to be there's a spender and a saver, and it's helpful to talk about that because those debts, nobody wants half of that on them when they feel as though I didn't agree to those debts.
That's a really good one. But okay. Yeah, both parties should really, really explore this ahead of time.
And you know what also, because Julie and one, when you see it on the back end, during the divorce, what's fascinating and totally normal is our clients, our women, their perception of, well, this seems like this would be fair. This seems like this is the right thing to do. Now, and it, may be fair, but we're not at the fair. We're not at the fair. There's no cotton candy, or funnel cakes. This is the law, and it is not always the same as what morally you think would be right or what your version of fair may be. And that's why these conversations could really improve probably marriages and maybe prevent divorces if the conversation was there, surrounding by a prenup and those types of issues.
And I think about fair as well in this situation. Who cares if I'm fair? That's possibly their mindset. I don't care if I'm fair. This is what I want to do.
Correct. And if this is what the law says, then I don't need to think, even if I don't think it's fair. Again, we are dealing with the laws in the state of Florida. Or if you live in any other state, it's divorce is by statute. And, depending on what type of state you live in, that is going to dictate the rules by which that divorce is going to follow. And, one of the things that I think we realize once we're in a marriage that would be helpful to discuss ahead of time is, what is your belief system around money? And we all grow up with different influences and have different perceptions, and really beginning that discussion and just having an understanding. I mean, it could be a lot of understanding on, hey, this is why I think this way about this, and these are my beliefs. That's why sometimes financial counselors can be very helpful in just understanding, because really, and we've talked about this before, really even understanding yourself, understanding your circumstances allows you some clarity in moving forward. And so part of understanding of why a prenup could be helpful is because it could be part of this process where we're examining our beliefs about money. Maybe we're examining our beliefs about parenting. And if, that is our desire, we're maybe going to talk necessarily, you really don't contract in a prenup about the children per se. But I think it opens that conversation to, hey, well, what is our household going to look like? Because maybe you're going into this marriage and your fiance thinks, well, hey, my mom stayed home. We all turned out great. They are still married. I want you to stay home. And, the woman is going into this thinking, I've always worked. My parents got divorced. My mom had to work. She hadn't had a job. It would have been really rough. So I have no intention of, at this point, staying home and raising our children. That might be a good conversation to have prior to. And it could work the opposite way. There's just so many things that maybe just a conversation about it and opening those lines of communication can be helpful as you're starting in this. We can talk about some other things that we can, pinpoint during the marriage, but it begins a conversation and then it can lead to, an agreement, a contract between the two of you.
Yeah, that would be a great conversation to have ahead of time. Yeah, exactly how things are going to lay out. So assets and debts, spousal support and alimony, just in case something happened, that's also included? or can be?
It is, and it can be. And that was why I was saying, from my perspective, if you've invested a lot in your career, but then even if it's just hey, if I stay home, with these kids and put my career on hold for yours, I want there to be an agreement that I will be entitled to X amount of years of alimony for the years maybe I contributed to your career, and it'll be a percentage or something of your income, because of course this is a contract between the two of you. Now, it can't be contrary to the law in Florida, but it could be maybe more and more elaborate. And the laws, they can change. So the laws that as they are today when you marry may be different. So therefore, if you're able to come to an agreement and contract on that, I think that could be very, very valuable for so many women, as the alimony laws are frequently at issue in the state of Florida to be changed. And, it's a way to protect yourself.
Also, marital conduct as well. That's a big one.
Yes. So that is frequently in there. So like a lot of times it will be, and this you will have seen, or would make a headline probably in a celebrity prenup, but hey, if you cheat, you get nothing. And but I do find that interesting in many times in prenups that I review, and it's not reciprocal. And so I would say, if that's what your husband wants, I think that ought to be, he needs to pay double or something, I mean, that's just off the top of my head, but that would seem fair.
Yeah, I like the way you think. So that's very common, we know. This also could outline the expectations in the marriage: household responsibilities, vacations, visits from in laws, things like that. I've never heard of that.
Yes. And I think that those are really important things. And again, it's almost like a premarital counseling through a prenup, but it can be very valuable because, again, you're having these conversations. And once again, you bring up the subject, because what if your husband thinks, hey, oh, of course, my mom is going to come live with us when we have kids, and you're like, wait, I didn't expect that. Or likewise, as your mother, you're like, of course, my mother's going to come live with us and help us take care of the kids. Your husband might be like, no way did I sign up for that. And I think those are really good questions and discussions to have, because you are about to embark on a journey and a partnership with one another, and that the law, there's certainly implications there, and these things happen. And, you're not marrying just an individual. You get the whole bunch of the family usually with it, and most couples work this stuff out. And for some, maybe it's an argument forever, but like, where are we going to spend Thanksgivings and Christmases until we have kids? And are we going to alternate families and do that? And, Julie, having had parents divorced, always was used to how we alternate the holidays. And so that is not an uncommon conversation, oh, it's this holiday here or whatever. But some people never have. Or, like that, there is that movie. It just occurred to me, that one movie, like Four Christmases. Like, yeah, you got to go. If each side's parents are divorced, you got to go to all these families or have all these Thanksgivings. And it could be worth a conversation or an agreement ahead of time.
Okay, side note, I love that movie. Every single year, every time it comes on, I'm watching it. It's just, I love that movie. Oh my goodness. People look at prenups as something that's just not romantic. And I get that. But based on all the things that we've talked about, even though it's not romantic, it could be just the way to go.
I think it's really reframing the way we think about it. I think it's what's smart. And you could make it romantic, but it doesn't have to be adversarial. Because, I mean, and I know it seems like that, because like, oh, hey, we're already planning. It's not that you're planning the breakup. I think if the fact that you're willing to both discuss it gives you maybe even a little bit more chances against the odds of getting divorced, because if you're willing to explore these conversations and talk about issues that are going to come up in your marriage and very potentially may cause disagreements because you're both coming from different families, different points of views, different belief systems. And even if you have previously been married, I mean, unless you are remarrying the same person, the two of you haven't been married to each other before. So it's at least worth the conversation because these topics can be difficult for most people to talk about in general. And they may be things they've never even thought about.
Definitely things I never even thought about, let me tell you. You're listening to Women Winning Divorce with Heather Quick, owner and attorney for Florida Women's Law Group. Heather, let's talk about some of the situations when a prenup is a good idea. Number one.
Absolutely. So when there is a disparity in wealth, so if one of you is entering that marriage with more money than the other, I think what we would commonly be like a first thing that we're thinking of is, family wealth or an inheritance. I think it's really important to think, should I consider this and understand, how the law is going to treat this money? And maybe I should protect it because it's from my family that I want to continue to stay in the family.
So this is one I think of and I say, okay, so one is a gold digger, or you may think I'm a gold digger. And so this is why you want me to sign this.
Well, that would be probably a very normal response. But the money is in the family. I want it to continue to grow and remain in the family. And the only way to do that is to sign this prenup and or have the money put in a trust, which would probably be a very wise move. Side note, which with a lot of generational wealth, there tends to be trust because that is one of the biggest things that threatens to decrease that wealth is divorces. So yes, but even if that money is in a trust, it still has implications in the event of a divorce that makes sense to again have a prenup. And what I would hope is that women who have that trust on their behalf and have that money are thinking this way as often as men are, because that's where I see a disparity, and women aren't asking for prenups as often as they should. That's just a little side pitch, but I think it's true.
I believe that's true. I mean, obviously, I'm not in the business, but I feel like that's true. And do you believe it's because we are more trusting, or why do you think that is?
I don't know if I would go as far as to say we are more trusting, but maybe we want to believe our fiance. We want to believe what we want to believe about him or our husband. And maybe we don't want to know if he says no. Maybe we don't want to hear that. Maybe we're not as confident. Maybe we're thinking this doesn't fall into the happily ever after, marry your Prince Charming belief that I grew up with, and that therefore this is difficult for me to bring up. Maybe. And I don't think men have that at all. From a standpoint of, there may be a reason they don't want to ask, but it's not that reason.
Yes. I tell you. So one of the other things that I thought about, so when one partner is wealthier than the other, another thing that popped in my mind is age. Could that possibly be a reason as well?
That can. And I think because in a prenuptial agreement, and we're going to talk about this, from some of the other reasons, but you in that prenuptial can waive your rights to inherit. Again, the law attaches certain rights to husbands and wives, even in the event of death, as far as what they would inherit. And if you're older and feeling like, hey, this may happen, I want a prenup, because a will can be changed. So if someone says, well, you can take care of that within a will, but a will can be changed because a will, you're only signing your will. And you can change your mind, as often as you want and redo that, versus a prenup is a contract between the two of you, and you can't change that on your own.
Okay. That's exactly what I was going to ask you. That does make sense, because in order to change it, I need your signature in order to make the changes that I want to make.
Right. And that will be the second half of the show, because then that becomes a postnup if you're already married. Okay. And that's a whole ball of wax. Different. It's all different.
Okay. So, all right. Let's talk about another reason. One or both own a business.
Yes. That's a very good reason to sign a prenup, because for many reasons, but obviously the business, if you own a business before you get married, that's going to be premarital. But you may have other partners in the business, and then once you get married, now your wife, your husband is essentially kind of partners in the business, and in order to protect the interests of the business from a divorce, it makes sense to look at a prenup, and that would make a lot of sense in protecting the business.
What if my spouse is my business partner? Does that just create even more issues?
Yeah, then you're all in it. But it would be good to outline, because, if you and your spouse are in business together and the business provides you and your family the livelihood, it would be so unfortunate that a divorce ends the business that supports you both. So to the extent that you can really identify, hey, how will we handle this in a divorce? How will the business survive and continue to support us if we are both involved in the business, working in the business? That could really save both of you financially in the event of a divorce, because you've already decided ahead of time, hey, we're going to agree, we're not going to both work in it, and this is just an example, but we're going to buy the other person out, and this is how this would look, because we don't envision that we would be able to work together if there was a divorce.
Talk about a messy situation. What about if you have children from previous relationships? That's another good idea.
That one is not as, I think, received poorly as maybe another one, because really that just has to do with, hey, I have children, and it's important that they inherit from me, and that, I have them, they are protected. And so therefore, the best way to do that is in a prenup, because again, that is not something that you can take care of in your will, because you cannot disinherit your spouse unless they have signed a prenup. They are entitled to a certain amount of your estate. So therefore, if you were to just put that in your will, your spouse could contest that, and she would get a certain portion of the estate if there's not a prenup. I know that was shocking to you.
Yeah. This is my will. This is that's what I'm thinking. This is my will. This is what I want to happen, just in case I die, right? Or when I die.
Yes.
So I can't tell you how I want my money to flow.
Not in regards to your spouse, unless they've signed a prenup. Again, the state of Florida, there are certain rules as it relates to husband and wives. And that does include if they're still your husband when you die. So you have got to have a prenup where they waive the right to inherit, or they agree to a certain amount that, maybe less, maybe more than what the law dictates. But that is really the only way to make sure that happens.
So I see here that this also applies if there are elderly parents that need to be taken care of as well. that can be included in a prenup. So it's probably a good idea just in case that's a situation going on.
Yeah, because that can be a burden financially or just, obviously emotionally. And that can absolutely be handled in a prenup. And also sometimes elderly parents, or they say as a plan, hey, we will give you the money maybe to put on an addition for us and let us live there. But there's no contract that says, hey, that was my parents' money. We're divorcing. I want that extra part out of this house. That could be a very smart thing to have written out.
Okay, I know I'm going to the next segment, but could that be in a postnup?
You could, yeah. But see, the postnup, when we get into that, you'll
Okay.
understand it's a lot more detailed, and I'll save it for why. But yes, you could.
Okay.
Yes, you could.
Okay. Look at me trying to run ahead. Okay. So
I know, you're just fired up.
another reason, if one partner has been divorced before, is that usually the one of the top two reasons in addition to money the other person has been divorced? Is that like one of the top two?
I would say yes. Now, I will tell you the person who's been divorced before, they're going to be they've learned some things. So they might, I would be wary, women, if you're marrying somebody who's been divorced before and you're the one with the assets, because maybe they lost everything in the divorce, or what they say, everything, half. I would certainly, if you're marrying somebody who's been divorced before, I think you should definitely seek some legal counsel on issues that would be helpful for you in a prenup.
All right. You got to expound on that one. That's a good topic because I never thought about that. There could be a reason
Yeah, like
for
then
this.
all of a sudden you're the one that has the house, and he's like, no, let's move into your house. Oh, yeah, don't you love me? Put me on the deed. And now it's a marital house, not your house. Or let's take a loan from your 401k to add into this house that now has my name on it. And now let's make everything that's yours mine and ours, versus you keep yours and I keep mine. Yes.
Heather, I feel like you've seen it all and heard it all. But you know what? We're not going to go there. What do the statistics say about divorce and marriages after the first? And I mean, really, to be serious, this is probably the reason why this one is on this list.
Yes, and it is. So, the statistics are 50% of marriages will end in a divorce. Now, if it's a second or third marriage, those statistics go up even higher. And it's really like 60 to 70% of those subsequent marriages end in divorce.
I wonder what the statistic is if you've married the same person 2 or 3 times.
I don't know, because that is, I mean, I've certainly have come across those situations, but I think that's a lower percentage of people who do that, but it has certainly happened.
Yeah. Okay. One partner has more debt. And I know this is something that we talked about in the first segment of the show. And just in case you guys missed it, you can go to our website, womenwinningdivorce.com, to download the episode and take a listen. So one partner has more debt.
Yes. And that is something, again, they might not disclose, and it might not be as apparent as, oh, they have wealth, but they have a lot of debt. You really need to have that discussion. And that would be a great reason for a prenup, because that's their premarital debt. But then during the marriage, are they trying to roll it into things that are marital? Maybe if you're helping them pay it off, but then, 5 or 10 years later, you're like, oh my gosh, like, what about all that money I helped pay off that was their debt? Now they have no debt. That happens a lot. And I have seen that many times. And that would be just in and of itself a reason to say that debt, even if it's gone, I get paid back if I helped you pay that off, because that was not my debt. And even if that was like the only thing it covered, I think that would help a lot of men and women, but I only see the women who have done that. And it's very discouraging because they were in it for both of them to move forward and become financially stable. But now they're like, wow, you know, helped them pay all this money off. Now we're divorcing and I get no credit back for that.
And if you think about it, when the creditors come for their money, they don't really care that you didn't have that debt before you got married. They just want their money.
Well, incorrect. And if for some reason you now are joint on debt with them, yeah, they're coming for their money.
Oh, so many places to go with this topic, I tell you. You're listening to Women Winning Divorce with Heather Quick, owner and attorney for Florida Women's Law Group. Heather, what is a postnup?
So a postnuptial agreement is a contract that you enter into with your spouse after you have been married. So it's really the timing, but it's very different in the sense of now that you're married, you have rights because now you're husband and wife. You're recognized by the state as husband and wife. So you have certain rights. So when signing a postnup agreement, now you're waiving rights you have. See, in a prenup, you're not married. You don't have those rights. So you're waiving future rights. And the difference really comes down to the fact that in a postnup, there's just going to be more disclosure. It needs to be more in depth because you're actually giving up something that you have, if that makes sense.
It does. And so, okay, let's kind of go back just a little bit for me. When we're talking about these things, is it okay if my future spouse and I have the same lawyer for these things? It seems like that would be a conflict, but that's just me. I'm asking the professional. Can we have the same lawyer?
No, because that would be a conflict. You can't have the same lawyer advising both of you and meeting with both of you to execute a prenup or a postnup. That would really cause, it just would not stand up because there would, it appears to be improper and as if there's a conflict. So, and there is, you can't represent two people who might be on opposing sides. Now, one attorney can draft the postnup or prenup, but it makes it difficult for the document to stand up, and it's not wise to sign that without legal counsel. Let's say a client is coming to us, a woman, to have a prenup done. We're going to advise her and tell her that he needs an attorney, and we're going to make sure that's in writing, and he knows he should have an attorney look over this. And, be advised. And then if even with after that, advice and recommendation, if they don't, and we won't let them really sign it in our office, don't want them to think we've coerced anyone, then the law is going to say, hey, they're an adult, they signed something. But really, it makes so much sense for each side to have an attorney because you're signing a legal document. And as a layperson, there's going to be legal language in there. And sometimes they're quite lengthy. You really should have a lawyer representing you to tell you it says what you think it says and explain to you the ramifications of signing this and what this means, and maybe suggest something else, like saying this isn't very equal, maybe it should be a little bit more equal, or this seems too harsh, maybe you ought not sign this.
So what made me think about this is the fact that, okay, a postnup, we're already married. So we're somewhat already on the same page. So it would be a conflict even for a postnup as well?
Yes, and I would say even more so with the postnup because, again, you both have rights because you're married. So you need to be advised individually as to the rights and really, hey, what are the ramifications? What are the, say, consequences of giving those up? And are you sure that this is a good bargain, that why are you entering into this and do you understand? So yes, even more so in a postnuptial agreement.
Even more so. So let's talk about reasons for a postnup. Something happens to a member of my family. I get a big inheritance. That does not automatically become marital assets. I'm married.
Correct. It doesn't automatically become marital. However, it just depends how you handle it, what you do with the money. Mm-hmm. Let's say that you use it to put, to update the kitchen, get yourself, the kitchen you wanted, the master bath and closet that you wanted. And then you divorce 2 years later. And it's like, no, that was my inheritance. I put $100,000 into this house. I want that coming off the top. No, it's not, because you put that into a jointly titled asset. So at the very minimum, you need clear understanding and counseling on how that money should be treated. And if in fact you should execute a postnup, or maybe sometimes even a trust. Again, there are a lot of options, and that's why it's good to find out how it's going to affect you. And many times, I will tell you that say those parents that, leave that money, they're very savvy and they leave it in a way that keeps it very protected for their children, because, the parents always know, they're like, hey, this is not going to last. And, we want you to get divorced, because I think most people's parents are they're not quiet when they don't like whoever your significant other. So there are ways to do that. And if none of that has been done, it could be a very good reason to sign a postnup.
Okay. Back to the parents thing. Basically, ain't that the truth? All righty. So is there another situation where you could have a significant financial change?
Yes. And it could be, let's think about a big business venture, maybe that's going to happen. And, that's why both sides need a attorney, because they may say, hey, you ought not waive that. You had a part of that financial thing coming up. And it also, it could be a very negative financial change that, I think this is the best example. There can be so many, but, your partner is gambling away money, and you just realize that they lost all this money. You might, say, hey, this has happened. You need to sign a postnup. And at least, I'm creating those thoughts for people who maybe wouldn't even expect or have that thought. It's possible. Obviously, when we're talking about both prenup and postnup, but both parties got to sign. There's got to be consent. I've certainly had clients before say, well, do you, maybe we could do this. And I ask, well, will your husband sign that? And then they're like, probably not. So I'm like, well, then it's probably not going to happen. And so that, again, that's why the prenup, obviously you're not married, rights haven't attached. Sometimes it may seem easier, but a postnup, I think there's going to be a little bit of, wonder why they're doing that. Little curiosity to pique that might say, I'm not really sure. Why would I be doing this? Again, what's in it for me?
Okay. And that, that brought up another reason for a postnup: addiction, possibly any legal problems that person may be having, right?
Absolutely. And now, on a broader scale, on legal trouble, there's only so much you're going to be able to do to insulate yourself from, implications they may have created for themselves legally. But to the extent that you can, and to the extent that you both are in agreement, it could be advised to be, the smart thing to do.
So this could possibly save that inheritance that my parents left me, just in case, if he signs and he's in legal trouble.
Exactly. And there are ways. And so there are other ways that you can protect it. And again, if that is your situation, you're like, I don't know that my husband would sign that, a postnup, he knows his inheritance is coming, then we would, discuss, because initially, and in theory, that inheritance is just yours. It is not marital, but you got to take the right steps and you got to treat it the right way so that it stays that way. And if the financial advisor you guys use is his best college friend, he may not be looking out for you to keep that protected.
Would that go back to, could possibly the financial advisor speak to you before the inheritance is given? So before the person unfortunately passes away, the financial advisor speaks to my attorney and we work out this language to make sure that it stays with me. Is that a good situation?
Yeah. And it's more of how will the accounts be treated? How will they be titled? And what will they be used for? So the first step is individually just being educated on how the law would treat that money, and then being aware and making decisions that you're okay with potentially, the downside of those in using the money.
Mm-hmm. Another reason that comes up in postnup as well as prenup, children from another relationship. That's a good reason. But
right.
Are these different children? I'm just, as in possibly if someone went outside the marriage and then they may have had a child. Does that make sense?
Oh, it does. It does. Yes. So, and I think that would be, generally, again, it's thinking, all right, we have our other children. Maybe when we first got married, we didn't have as much. Now we do. Maybe we sign a postnup now as to where we agree how we're going to make sure our children inherit, or, if we divorce. Yes. So I think that would be very appropriate. And likewise too. Yeah. If there was like an extramarital relationship and another child, that blends in with, hey, you got marital problems and we're going to handle this postnup to deal with, that issue as well.
Okay. Yeah. Because those are the children that I first thought of, but of course the ones you brought into the marriage as well. What if one spouse becomes a stay-at-home parent?
I think that's a great reason to have that discussion, because if you're both doing this together, I think you should look at, well, what happens if, down the road, I'm still at home, I've given up my career, or significantly stepped out of the field. And as we know in our world right now, how rapidly technology is changing things, it really does make a difference. It does. It impacts you on reentry. And, why not discuss that and agree, like, hey, if I stay home, you're going to agree that I'm going to have certain financial reassurance and stability that the law may or may not direct, but we're going to agree within ourselves that I'm doing this for the family. So if you decide, down the road that you want a divorce, I'm not really left scrambling, and again, subject to Florida law on alimony and support, when we could agree to it now. And I think that one is it's really important because of how much your employability changes. And I think it does definitely, absolutely disproportionately affects women over men. And it's just because we, as women, one, there's a lot of recovery and everything after having children. And many times they see that as what they really want to do.
What about if the marriage has struggled?
That is I would say one of the most common reasons, because, if you're having trouble and you're working through it, which is certainly commendable, to work through those struggles, but I've seen it in this instance where there is the necessity to rebuild trust. And that could be struggling for, infidelity, maybe, financial infidelity, emotional, whatever, something that really caused the trust to suffer in the marriage. And, you're willing to stay married, but you're like, I want you to commit to this postnup so that I don't feel like I got duped just to stay married or something. I think it's valid. It's a very valid reason which to do so. And one of the better reasons or more often reasons people do that, because they really are working to make it work. So they're willing to say, yes, I will agree to X, Y, Z. And many times, it in fact does, help people stay together, and certainly can simplify the divorce if not.
So I thought about that earlier. Has a postnup ever saved a marriage? Probably. Possibly.
I don't know. We'll have to ask for comments. Maybe somebody will reach in, because it could. I do. I think that, there are a lot of great marriage counselors out there. There are a lot of people who work through those issues, and sometimes they just need a little something tangible to help them. So I'd love to hear if it does or not.
Anything else you want to add on this topic?
Just that there's no harm in at least finding out what a postnup or a prenup could do for you. I think mostly prenup, before you get married, and really spend that time, that due diligence in this investment that you're going to vow to be with this person, till death do you part. It'll be a really long time. So, it's at least worth investigating as to whether a prenup would be a good idea.
Indeed. Thank you for listening to Women Winning Divorce. We hope you found information to help you navigate your divorce. If you like our show, please take the time to subscribe and provide a 5-star review. If you need more information, please visit our website at womenwinningdivorce.com, where you will find previous episodes and other helpful content. Join us next week as we continue our journey of women winning divorce.